exactly. So you have to keep blasting them. See how steep they are?
And look at that hole there. That's where a cannon would be.
And they're on angles so you can see everyone coming to the front door. Hello.
There's a lot of people just lying down on the ground.
Look at all the soldiers right now, right? So they're going to do a demonstration of the cannons over there in 40 minutes.
Awesome.
Maybe we get to come and walk around now while it's empty. Hey, you want to go check out that gun position quickly?
Okay. I want to stop.
No, you're coming with... They're coming up here to the battle tower.
It says, this marks the spot where General Sir Isaac Brock was buried from 1812 to 1824. For 12 years he was buried here.
The General Isaac Brock was the general that led this fort. And now he's underground. And see how the cannons, how it's a little hole here, but they have so much space out there to fire, right? So these guys...
I know what to do. Sometimes there's a cat there with a giant man. You could put a duck there. The people could shoot on the side.
Yeah, there we go. Backward shot there. And over here, you can't see it right now, Ro, but on the other side of these trees is where the American fort is. We'll be able to see it in a better spot. The trees are grown in right now.
What's about that spicy pea? Looks so pretty.
Look at the general, Rowan. The captain's got a sword.
See the guy behind him? He'll step on the dog first.
Look at these. Wow. Hey,
Mortar.
mini cannons, little mortars. So look at, touch it, Ro. Drop a cannonball inside there.
Yeah, but look, this is what they would pick up the cannonballs with. So people would try to carry it over and put it in.
I think you the problem is we can pick these up, but no cannonballs we could pick up. It's really impressive. So cool.
What, you want to try holding the cannonball?
Look at this. These are bar shots. This style of shot was used mainly in naval battles. Upon firing, it twisted and tore through the ship's rigging. It was also effective against an alien battle formation. It's classic. Do you take Are you taking
No, I'm just
See, Rowan, look at, they don't have cushions or anything. They just have wood and a few blankets.
Did you see the planks of wood, Rowan? They pull them out.
And they have one fireplace to keep the whole thing warm.
Yeah, I think this will like have like two or three.
Yeah.
I'll be the closest one to it.
Look at the utensils they used.
That's like that's their fort.
Look at all the guns against the wall.
Yeah, if you guys are feeling a bit shit, you can try some like
Ro, do you want to try on an army coat?
Why?
He said you can try them on if you want. Okay.
Keeps you nice and warm though.
Yeah, in the winter. Not in the summer.
Yeah.
You got their backpacks up there.
Oh look, they have paper. What are these?
Hello, prisoner? Yes. Really?
Oh, with the nuts.
That were fake.
Yeah. Let's get in.
No! Now I'm stuck in a jail. Let me out of here! Oh wow. Oh, look at how nice that is.
Yeah, let's see all this.
That's like very fancy around. That's how like a rich person would live. Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. So let's watch the pipe.
Look at looks it.
Hello.
Right now it's just water.
I saw the bottle. No.
It's quite the elaborate tent.
Oh, the captain. So that's why he got to do this. Privacy. Cramps was like what, 4?
To see the captain's rowing, and that's where all the soldiers would go from the captains.
So he's a
Thanks,
captain.
guys.
So this side is the special people. The people in charge. People that
Zero.
make a
There's even kids
decision.
playing.
Yep. Yes, with those. So am I not? They got a garden going on here. What are they got? Corn. Corn back there.
Do you know what those flowers are, Heather?
With the yellow one?
The purple.
No, I don't know what those are. There's something like that, but they're growing cucumbers and tomatoes. It looks like radish.
Also help.
I'm not sure what this is.
Oh no,
Is edible?
do I smell smoke?
Yep.
Oh, it's that one.
No, that's the smell of a cigar.
Cigarette.
A cigar. It's like a really big cigarette. It smells kind of nice to me. Look at this.
Oh, like make a throw for over there.
Isn't that crazy, eh? Oh, sweet. Yeah.
So that says Royal and Man Regiment. So I guess it's now. What is it? And what is the number?
They're regular units.
Regular unit?
Regular British Army units. Depends on when they were raised in Canada.
Nice. Sorry. Yeah, it sounds good, doesn't it? But did you hear that? Newfoundland Regiment. So that means all the way from the East Coast they came over here to help out.
And they have some pizza down there too, so we can go get some pizza. Yay. Yes, we should. Look at this.
So this is where they're all camping out, bro.
And they're staying in these tents around. This is made of a very hot material compared to like what we use today.
Oh, does it take a while to burn? A while to burn, like before it burns it where?
Oh, who knows? Bombs and gunpowder, so that if it blew up, it was down below and it would blow up the whole base. Oh, that's cool.
Oh,
So see how it's actually made out of. It's actually made out of rock and stuff, right, Ron?
but so after those
And there's their well where they get water.
it's a wishing well. I'm 25 years.
And they have a guard. No, it's a guard house.
I serve.
Yes, it's open. That's the key in the lock. And everything. That was on this door, which you can't open and close. And so there's one door, and you come through, and you have another door to open. And I bet you somebody had to stay in here. And this is the barrels, and powder and stuff. Probably.
This is all the what they these are would be full of what they use to make their bombs. Fire off their cannonballs.
See?
Maybe I have going in here.
Yeah, I'm joining today. Okay? This door has a hole in it.
So stop.
That's as far as it opens. The view from the original blockhouse, which has been reconstructed on the upper floor, will look to the fort's surroundings.
Those not that stable.
Okay, up you go.
That's not that stable. Right.
Go, just stop talking and find the stairs, please. People coming down? Yeah, you gotta wait. Or we can go in here first if you want.
En route to the mini fort.
Oh, this is how you get out if you want not to take your time.
I think we could see.
Still not tall enough.
It's crazy how they waxed all the nubs.
So they wouldn't rock on. Or bugs won't get in.
Yeah.
So this not rectangular blockhouse in the center of the south ravine is a replica of the original.
Stand at the
Constructed
bottom.
as an artillery storehouse, the original structure also provided a defensive position and lookout during an attack.
Thank you.
The south ravine served the same defensive function as the north ravine at the front gates, but is much stronger. Today, a tunnel connects it to the fort.
So back in the day, there was no tunnel rowing. These guys would just be on their own.
Coming up.
Nobody's on the steps on the next landing.
You just pay attention to your stairs, sir. Thank you.
Same.
Oh, wow. You can probably go get it. You can see if you want me to pick you up. Oh, you can see.
See that path?
Yeah, that's the path we just saw, right? So it's on this side.
We should put this one.
I wonder why these are hinged.
To close that.
No.
Maybe.
Dad,
Washing?
look.
Yes. Exactly. So they can close it up.
Maybe when they're closed.
Quick, open it! The enemies are coming! Open up the hatches!
Dad, will put it perfectly.
Get the hatches open! Attack!
So maybe if they were invaded.
Look at the giant hole, eh?
Oh, that's so hot.
See the giant hole the soldiers would try to come across?
Yeah, but they could have very cool down a boom.
They could.
Especially at nighttime if they didn't see the tall.
That's crazy. You can't see the. I'm surprised they don't try to manicure the trees so you can still see the other fort.
Yeah. So when they're coming across.
They could take out all those buildings and aim all there. Yeah, that's all America. And America boats.
I can't think of a better description than to call it a giant Q-tip. Sir? Sorry, apologize for that. It's moist and it cleans out the barrel. And the one thing it really does for you, guarantee things, is distinguish because I can guarantee everything fire doesn't business stock still blowing from the inside. Sometimes the barrels over time get pitted and they hold on to embers. So you really want to make sure you're not well before you introduce the next friend. Bringing up the chart. Historically, last thing you need to do, here's a hole in that bag. Now expose that gun. That's where that thing. Have you looked at it? It's sort of cute. Don't do the same.
That really was loud. I know you felt it.
Yeah, my heart exploded.
I think they might do it again.
Next time, someone can take them or we could start to.
Did you see them go in?
Yes, I'm listening. Then maybe next year or today we could do pretend big brother.
Yes. I will play pretend. Look how they carry all the cannons together.
They're shiny they are too.
I guess we lost something.
Where are those birds? I saw you crying in here.
Look at the big logs. Doesn't that look like Papa and Grandma's house? Look up. Because this Papa and Grandma's house are on that portion of their house. So these big. Listen to me. Were you listening to me? No.
Yeah.
Papa and Grandma's house is as old as these buildings were. And that's why you see the big wood like that. What's the point of even talking to him? What is the point of even talking to him?
Okay, what did that say?
with the gate.
Please try to stay up the path that you guys get a good view.
Yeah. That's our goal.
Get up. 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 Up.
Be directly
Up.
behind Mr.
Up. Up. 5th, as American forces both on the lake from ships and on land from batteries in Fort Niagara began to bombard Fort George. The bombardment was overwhelming, reducing the fort basically to a pile of rubble, as one American delightedly accounted that he was very pleased that he could count the shingles blowing off the roofs of the British fort as they bombarded it. So we're going to begin with the bombardment. If you do have sensitive hearing, what the heck are you doing coming to a reenactment? So with the bombardment of Fort George and the surrounding area, in the early hours of May the 27th, American forces approached the north shore here off the lake. Now the British had been expecting an attack, but they believed it would be like prior attempts of invasion and across the river, so few of their resources were devoted against an attack from the lake. But as the morning mist cleared, they were shocked to see almost 15 enemy warships by their count, and they saw almost 100 small boats and scows, each with between 50 to 60 men on it, rowing towards the shore. An overwhelming force was coming to the shoreline, and the British, with small pickets out there, attempted to hold them while they waited for reinforcements to arrive. Now, the first American forces we have coming out here, they're wearing frocks fringed with red. These are Kentucky militiamen. Now, the Kentucky militia were actually not allowed to wear blue. Only their officers were, but the clever amongst you have noticed I pointed out they're wearing blue, and that's because the Kentuckians were clever. They asked to wear black uniforms, and anybody here who's worked with natural dye, what color does black fade to? Blue. Now, the first pickets that were resisting were going to be made up of Canadian militia and some of the Six Nations allies of the British. Now, the militia was very simple to be a part of. Every able-bodied male between the ages of 16 and 60 was required to be part of the militia. Militia service during peacetime usually meant coming to a place like this once a year, proving you could operate your firearm by firing it 3 times without assistance, and then you got free beer the rest of the day. They usually had it on a holiday. We call those ones door knockers. They usually had it on a holiday so that you would have a festival. You bring your whole family, there'd be fireworks, there'd be music, there'd be food. It was more of a festival than it was an actual military training day. But when war breaks out, never underestimate the militia on either side. Because here's the thing, the militia are defending their own homes. If you're in that situation, you're going to fight pretty viciously too. So the British reinforcements are coming out. We have troops of the 1st Royal Scots and the Glengarry Light Infantry. The Glengarrys are easy to spot. They're the ones wearing 1812 camouflage with their dark green and gray uniforms. The Glengarrys were so good at camouflage that the Iroquois nicknamed them the Black Stumps for their ability to hide in the woods. Because all you see are those little shakos popping up in the distance. Dialects, Scots, Irish, French Canadians, Loyalists, and a number of escaped slaves fighting in the regiment. And all these men were fighting for the same thing, their own freedoms. The Loyalists knew what their fathers and grandfathers had fought for in the American Revolution. The Scots and Irish were almost all Catholics, and Catholics didn't have full civil rights in the United States, something the British guaranteed here in Canada. And of course, escaped slaves are fighting for a much more obvious form of freedom. Now, both sides are deploying into a skirmish order rather than the traditional lines. Light troops are trained to fight spread out on a battlefield and fight more independently. They're going to pick off shots at the enemy to annoy and harass them. And of course, they're going to know when to duck when a cannonball is coming.
Now, more American troops have come out to join us, some regulars in their blue and red uniforms, but you may have noticed some uniforms there that are gray, and they're wearing green bands and white little tufts in their hats. These men are representing a unit that was raised a little bit later in 1813, but they're out here today, so let's talk about them, and that is the Canadian Volunteers. 153 Canadian citizens joined up with the Americans to fight alongside them for the invasion of Canada. Their commander, by the name of Joseph Wilcox, was actually one of the fellows mainly responsible for the burning of the village of Newark, now Niagara-on-the-Lake, in 1813. And as a result, there was a death sentence over his head. If he was caught, he was to be hung, drawn, and quartered. Are any good patriotic Canadians in the crowd? We did get them. Siege of Fort Erie, we put a bullet in them. Now, the initial American landing was heavily contested by the regular forces that came out, in particular by the Glengarrys. At an interesting moment, the Glengarrys actually charged the Americans as they were still in the low waters with the bayonet. Winfield Scott, who had gained greater fame in the war, commanding at the Battle of Chippewa, records that he actually almost got bayoneted by a Glengarry while about knee-deep in the lake. We see the reinforcements moving in that strict precision of the time period. Tactics of the time period required men to work not as individuals like modern armies, but they worked as a cog and part of a greater machine. Thinking independently was frowned upon in the regular forces. And there you see what a well-trained force can pull off. Volleys were very effective out on the battlefield with these weapons. Flintlock muskets have a few problems. First is they don't always work. Misfire rates can be as high as 20% in good conditions. To further that, they're not rifled, which means at 100 meters, you can miss your intended target up to 10 feet in any direction. So how on earth do you hit something with a weapon that's unreliable and inaccurate? You just saw it. If you get 50 men to all point and pull the trigger at the same time and in the same direction, odds are someone hit something. So those strict and disciplined volleys are going to deal with the problems of the musket. As a result, your men had to be trained to be as fast as they possibly could. In this time period, the British were some of the best at that, but it still would take them as long as 15 to 20 seconds to load and fire a volley. The regimental is the yellow. For the British, their national is the big Union flag, and the regimental is the green one with the wee little Union flag in the corner. These flags were to be protected to the death. The men carrying them understood the importance of these flags. For the British in particular, the king himself laid his hand upon them. There are records of men going to extreme lengths to protect these colors. A battle in Spain during this era, a 15-year-old ensign refused to surrender the colors to a group of French horsemen who proceeded to attack him. He would receive 7 saber slashes, including one to the head. He would be stabbed 2 times, trampled, and have his left arm cut off. And yet he still did not surrender the colors. He actually tore them from the staff and held them underneath his body. He would survive that encounter. Now, in today's idea, the thought of bringing a band with you to the battlefield seems almost bizarre today, but 200 years ago it was very important. Your musicians were your walkie-talkies. They would be spread out amongst the troops to relay orders up and down, as the high-pitched fight and the drumming could often be heard over the din of battle. But sometimes you would have them play patriotic tunes to help rally the men and give them a bit of spirit as they go out onto the battlefield. Both armies very much employed this. In fact, during the landing, the Americans had all their musicians crammed onto one barge. The many as 80 musicians were blaring Yankee Doodle throughout almost the entire engagement. Now, as I mentioned, the British did a very good job of pinning the Americans down on the beach, but they soon discovered there was another force that was going to come into play that was going to tear the British apart, and that was the United States Navy. The United States Navy had about 15 warships just hovering behind this landing force, and their commander, a fellow by the name of Oliver Hazard Perry, who gained later fame in the Battle of Lake Erie, or Put-in Bay, moved them close and began using his artillery on the ships to rip apart the British forces using solid shot and canister. Now, solid shot, we all know what that looks like. Solid iron balls going skipping across the battlefield. And these are extremely deadly projectiles. A light cannonball at 450 yards, tested by the British Army, it was found it could go through as many as 17 human beings. So you can imagine what it's going to do to these tightly packed formations on an open field. And then canister, or grape shot, it was also known. For the Americans, that was a burlap sack filled with iron balls about the size of a musket ball, so about a marble. You would then have horse nails packed in there as well, so that when it's fired, it turns it into a giant shotgun. That's going to rip men apart. Accounts from the time period said it was like fabric being torn in two, the sound, when it struck the men. Now, you see musicians doing their secondary role out on the battlefield. These lines need to be kept clear. The dead and the dying can be a little bit of an inconvenience in keeping your order, so you need to get them out of the way. As a result, we have this image of drummer boys. These were men. Musicians were paid better, and they stood behind everybody else. You ask any man where he wants to be on a battlefield, that is where he wants to be. Let the dumb kids be in the front. Now, as the American numbers began to slowly overwhelm the British realized that holding on to their position could mean the destruction of their forces, and with limited troops available to the British in the Canadas, their commander by the name of Vincent decided that he was going to get out of here. He began ordering his men to withdraw, and he ordered the rest of his troops in the Niagara to meet him at Beaver Dams so that they could withdraw back to prepared positions at Burlington Heights in modern Hamilton. In fact, you can still see some of those original defenses. If you visit Dundurn Castle, some of the earthworks are still visible. I've heard a few people talking about the uniforms around me, and, well, one of the most common questions I've ever heard in over 12 years of coming out to reenactments is why on earth did the British decide to wear a bright red uniform with convenient white shoot me here X's in the middle of their chests? Well, some of you are seeing why. As they fire their volleys, note the thick cloud of smoke that the musketry creates. Muskets, when they fire, that black powder burning off creates 20 times more volume and smoke than the powder. So suddenly you're going to get these thick blue-gray clouds in front of you, and with the large numbers in most of these battles, a couple thousand muskets going off, pounds of gunpowder, it would not take long for the battlefield to become a huge smoke screen. And in this fog of war, you're going to barely be able to see anything. Most accounts said the first time you would see your enemy is about 20 paces, so about the distance that the two armies are facing each other now. So that does not give you a lot of time to figure out if someone is your friend or your enemy. So just like football, hockey, any professional sport, the best way to make sure you are not scoring on your own net is to make sure everybody is wearing a bright and distinctive uniform. So the British wore bright red. Why red? Well, red's the cheapest dye available. And the Americans wore bright blue. Why is that? Well, that's because their first uniforms were made by the French. That's a true story. If there's any Americans in the crowd, you remind them of that every chance you get. But as the war progressed, the Americans actually had to switch to different uniforms. Those gray uniforms you see out there are examples of the later war uniforms that had to be worn because the cost of blue dye in the United States had increased significantly. In some areas, as much as 15 times its pre-war cost. And with the American government running low on money, they couldn't afford to keep buying this very expensive blue dye. And why did it get so expensive? Well, when they declared war on Great Britain, they also declared war on their blue dye suppliers. So that dried up that source very quickly. But the gray uniform lives on. In 1814, just south of here at the Battle of Chippewa, gray-coated Americans took on the British and defeated them in equal numbers on an open battlefield. First time that had been done since 1747. So a huge victory for the Americans. And that gray coat, as a result, lives on as a mark of a professional United States Army. And that is at West Point Military Academy, where cadets are still wearing gray. One of the reasons is the War of 1812. Eventually you get used to those. If you watch me, I'm not even flinching. I mean, I'm half deaf, but I'm not flinching. looks like the Americans are starting to fall back here. Unfortunately for them in this reenactment, their back is not to the lake where they can receive support from the ships. Their back is to a little copse of woods there, so unfortunately no ships in the woods. But the two things that really did in the British in this battle was the fact that the American command was very well coordinated when they landed with the naval forces, with the land forces, and they had overwhelming numbers just to push the British off the field and out of the community, pushing them all the way up to modern Hamilton. In fact, the battle is such a good example of cooperation between naval and land forces that at West Point Military Academy, they still study this battle as an example of combined arms operations. And as the battle begins to come to a close here, this is the end of part 1. Don't forget tonight that we will be doing our tactical inside the fort, 8 o'clock. But come early. Seating is, well, the best seating is limited. There's lots of seating. So feel free to come on back, check that out. There'll be also a bit more of a program with the Fife and Drum Corps. But this is also an opportunity for us to remember that though this is a bit of entertainment for some of us, it's educational, it's a hobby for many of the folks on this field, it is still an act of remembrance to those who did fight here. Men fought and died on this ground, and we must never forget that. So it is a tradition at these events that at the conclusion of these engagements, we take a moment to remember those who fought and fell here, whether they fought for their king, for their republic, for their tribe, for their family, it doesn't matter. If they fought here, they deserve to be remembered, and so we do so with a lament. So I would ask that during the playing of the lament, please observe silence, and if you will please remove your caps in honor of those who fought and served here. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for all the reenactors who have come out here for this weekend. So there's still plenty of events going on in and around